Hi. In this section of the podcasting course, we're going to cover editing. We're going to cover the theoretical side of editing, just some background material about sound files, recording formats, things like that. But most of this will be expanded upon in the practical sections using Audacity. So we will talk about some software packages, sound formats, recording formats, and also where you can get some third-party sound, music, and effects and things like that. So look, nearly all audio editing now is done on a computer, unless you're in a very specific studio using tape or something like that. But that's not going to be applicable in any of these cases. There's lots and lots and lots of audio software packages out there. There's some free ones. Most of them are proprietary, though. You have to pay for them. Adobe Audition is very popular. That's part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. So if you're using the likes of Photoshop or InDesign or Premiere Pro, things like that, you would also have Adobe Audition. That's very, very good. Pro Tools is very good. Logic, GarageBand, there's tons of them out there, but those aren't free. You do have to pay for them. Well, GarageBand is free, but you have to have a Mac. However, Audacity is a good free alternative. It's open source. It's available for pretty much every platform. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, so that covers pretty much everything. So we're going to use that in the practical section of the course, Audacity, but you can see more on that elsewhere. Now, computers store analog audio in a digital form. The first kind of major digital audio form was CD audio, and it has a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz, which basically means it takes a snapshot of the audio 44,100 times per second. And WAV, uncompressed WAV audio, which is CD quality audio, it takes up about 10 megabytes per minute of audio. So if you had 100 megabytes of data or 100 megabytes of audio, if you had 10 minutes of audio, that would be 100 megabytes of data. If you had 100 minutes, it would be 1,000 megabytes or a gigabyte of data. So it's not a problem for processing, but audio can build up in size, fairly quickly if you're recording lots of stuff. And that's where compression comes in. Now, this is not to be confused with audio compression that we talked about earlier. This is file compression, but file compression as applied to audio, which can be confusing. I do understand that. The MPEG group, the Motion Picture Experts group, they have come up with a whole bunch of compression techniques down throughout the years. And one that has been incredibly popular is MPEG-1 Audio Layer 3, known as MP3. And depending on the way you have it set up, it can shrink an audio file by about a factor of 10. Now, it uses a whole variety of different kind of techniques in order to achieve this, which we won't get into here. But MP3 is basically what powers podcasts. Most podcasts are MP3. So just be aware of that. We typically record in WAV, but then we export in MP3. In terms of the actual recording formats, everything is recorded digitally now. Again, unless you're recording on tape, which is not applicable in this case. You record directly to the computer, or you might record directly on a phone, or you might use a handheld recorder. These can be pretty good. They've usually got fairly good mics built into it. In the past, I've used it. This actual picture here, the one you can see, is a Marantz unit. I've used one of those for years. Built like a tank. I've brought it to music festivals. It's fallen in the mud. It's had all sorts of liquids spilled on it. It still works. Zoom H1s, they're pretty good as well. They're a bit flimsier than the Marantz, but the sound quality from them is very, very good. So they're quite good. Look, if you're interested in something like that, they are worth looking at. If you want something for mobile recording, you don't want to use a phone. Although what you can also get now is you can get microphones that you can use in tandem with your phone. So those are fairly good as well. In terms of software, the main thing you need to understand is audio editing typically is timeline-based editing. So you're moving along in a sequence of time. There's single track editing, which is where you're just editing one sound source. But then you have multi-track editing, which is where you're trying to combine multiple sound files together into one whole. So that's maybe where you have different voices recorded separately, or you might have some music from one place, some voice from somewhere else, and you're putting those together. And that's something we will get into in the practical section as well, using Audacity. If you're looking for third-party sounds, so I mentioned this earlier on, that you can't, if you want to use music in your podcast, you can't just go and use, something from the top 10. It's the top 10 singles, if that even exists anymore. That's not free to use material. That's copyrighted material. So you would need to have stuff that's either royalty free, open source, or using one of the various licenses like that. There's a couple of places that are worth checking out. There's Bensound, that's pretty good. Open Sound, but Freesound is fairly good. Freesound.org, and I will show an example of that in one of the practicals as well. There's a couple of links on this site that are worth exploring if it's something you want to do. There's a good video by Aloe Black, I don't know if you remember that singer, explaining what happens with digital compression to audio. And BBC Academy is very, very good as well. There's lots of good resources up there. But this is really something that we'll get to in more detail in the practical section using Audacity. A bit of bibliography. Okay. Talk to you in the next section.